The following content has been generated with artificial intelligence under minimal human supervision. The data presented may contain errors or inaccuracies. The opinions expressed in this content do not necessarily reflect the vision, position, or values of Digi-all. We recommend verifying critical information with additional sources before making decisions based on this content.
Welcome to Digi-all Tech News. Today is November 23rd, 2025. I'm Kylie Brooks, and this is where technology becomes clear and engaging. All right, we've got quite a lineup today. Let me give you the headlines before we dive in. Google says it needs to double its AI capacity every 6 months. Yes, you heard that right. Every 6 months. The company is also pushing back hard against claims that Gmail is using your emails to train AI. Spoiler, they say it's not happening. Amazon's latest layoffs are hitting engineers the hardest, with nearly 40% of cuts targeting technical roles. Stanford researchers just created an AI that designs proteins that have never existed before, and they actually work. Your browser is probably fingerprinting you right now, and there's not a whole lot you can do about it. And Ubisoft has built a game where you control your AI teammates just by talking to them. Pretty wild. Let's start with Google's AI infrastructure situation, because honestly, the numbers here are staggering. Amin Vahdat, who's the Vice President of Machine Learning, Systems, and Cloud AI at Google, basically told employees in an internal meeting that the company has to double its AI serving capacity every 6 months. We're talking about a 1,000-fold increase in just 4 to 5 years. Think about that for a second. 1,000 times more capacity. He didn't mince words either, calling this the most critical and most expensive part of the AI race. Now, Google pushed back on how this was reported, saying the comments were taken out of context. Their spokesperson clarified that Vahdat was talking about demand for AI services, not necessarily massive new build-outs. They say they're focusing on hardware efficiencies and software optimizations. But here's the thing. This lines up with what we're seeing across big tech. Google, Microsoft, Amazon, and Meta are planning to spend over $400 billion on AI infrastructure in the next year alone. $400 billion. And it's not without consequences. There's growing environmental backlash, with communities pushing back against new data centers. Now, speaking of Google, there's been some confusion this week about Gmail and AI training. Reports went viral on social media claiming that Google changed its policy to use your Gmail messages and attachments to train AI models, and that you'd have to disable smart features like spell checking to opt out. Google's response? Not true. Spokesperson Jenny Thompson was pretty clear. They haven't changed anyone's settings. Gmail smart features have existed for years, and they do not use Gmail content to train their Gemini AI model. Those smart features, things like spell checking, tracking orders from your emails, adding flights to your calendar, they've been around for a while. If you enable them in Google Workspace, yes, Google can use your content to personalize experiences across workspace products. But Thompson emphasized that does not extend to AI training. Interestingly, one of our colleagues at The Verge found they'd been opted back into smart features after previously disabling them, so it might be worth double-checking your settings. But the bottom line is, no policy change here. Over at Amazon, we're seeing the human cost of the AI shift playing out in real time. The company's recent layoffs, which they announced last month, have hit engineering and technical roles disproportionately hard. According to estate filings analysed by CNBC, nearly 40% of the more than 4,700 terminations reported in key states like New York, California, New Jersey, and Washington targeted engineers. Now, these are just the numbers from WARN filings in those states, and the total cuts are over 14,000 jobs, so this is only part of the picture. But it tells a story. Technical positions, the roles that used to be the backbone of Amazon's innovation, are being cut at the highest rates. This is part of Amazon's strategic pivot towards AI-driven efficiency. The implication is pretty clear. Traditional engineering skills might be taking a backseat to specialized AI competencies. For the thousands of engineers affected, this isn't just about losing a job. It's about a fundamental shift in what Amazon values in its workforce. Okay, now for something genuinely fascinating from the world of science. Researchers at Stanford have developed an AI called EVO that can create proteins that have never existed before. And I'm not talking about theoretical proteins. These actually work. Here's what makes this different. Most AI tools for proteins focus on their structure, but EVO works at the DNA level. It's trained on bacterial genomes, and it exploits the way bacteria organize their genes. They tend to cluster related genes together, often transcribing them into a single messenger RNA for efficiency. The AI learns to predict the next DNA base, kind of like how large language models predict the next word. When researchers gave EVO a partial gene sequence, it could complete it with remarkable accuracy. It reconstructed 85% of a gene from just 30% of the input. But here's where it gets really cool. They gave it a bacterial toxin that didn't have a known antitoxin and asked it to generate one. Half of the sequences it created mitigated the toxicity, and 2 of them fully restored bacterial growth. These antitoxins showed only 25% identity to any known antitoxins. They were essentially pieced together from parts of 15 to 40 different proteins. The AI also created RNA inhibitors and proteins that block CRISPR systems with a 17% success rate. 2 of those were entirely novel and couldn't even be predicted by traditional structure prediction software. This is the kind of breakthrough that could accelerate drug discovery and synthetic biology in ways we're only beginning to understand. Now let's talk about privacy, because there's something happening right now that most people don't even realize. Browser fingerprinting. Kevin Boone wrote a detailed piece about this, and it's honestly pretty concerning. Here's how it works. When you visit a website, the server can collect all sorts of information about your browser. What version you're using, what language, your time zone, your installed fonts, your hardware specs, even quirks in how your browser renders graphics. All of this creates a unique fingerprint that can identify you in 1 out of 1,000 cases, sometimes more. And the frustrating part is that the usual countermeasures don't really work. Disable JavaScript? Sure, you avoid canvas fingerprinting, but you also break most websites, and you flag yourself as someone trying to hide. Spoof your attributes? Advanced trackers can detect inconsistencies. Boone does offer some practical advice, though. Use a VPN with rotation, use incognito mode, manage your cookies, and try to blend into the most common configurations, like stock Chrome on Windows. That can reduce your identifiability from 99% to about 50% over time. The downsides are real. Sites might glitch more, you'll see more captures, and some things just won't work as smoothly. Legally, this probably violates GDPR's consent principles, but it's largely unchallenged. Boone's conclusion? We need legislative action because fingerprinting is invisible and adaptable, and individual countermeasures can only do so much. And finally, let's end on something a bit more fun. Ubisoft has created a game prototype called Teammates, where your AI companions understand natural language and visual context, and you control them just by talking. This builds on the Neo NPCs they showed off with NVIDIA back in 2024, but this time they're actually testing it with hundreds of players in a closed beta. It's a first-person shooter set in a dystopian future, and you play as a member of the Resistance trying to recover lost equipment by directing AI teammates. There are 3 NPCs. Jaspar is your assistant who can adjust settings and answer questions about the game's lore. Then you have Pablo and Sofia, who are robots that respond to commands based on what they can see. You can tell them things like, stand behind that barrel, and they'll actually do it. The AI is pretty chatty too, with customizable personalities. One of the options is literally called Bad Cat and Good Boy. Ubisoft's been experimenting with AI for a while now. They used it in Ghost Rider for dialogue and in Anno 117 for art. The middleware they're building is compatible with their Snowdrop and Anvil engines, so we might see this tech in future games. They're collecting feedback right now for research. It's a glimpse into where gaming could be headed. Less about memorizing button combos, more about just talking to your team like you would in real life. So there you have it. Google's racing to scale AI infrastructure. Your Gmail is apparently safe from AI training. Amazon's reshaping its engineering workforce. Stanford's creating proteins that never existed. Your browser is tracking you in ways you can't easily stop. And Ubisoft is experimenting with voice-controlled teammates. It's a lot to process, but that's where we are in tech right now. We'll keep following these stories as they develop. Thank you for staying informed with Digi-all Tech News. We'll be back with more updates as they develop.